Instead of fireworks, try out levitation arrows for your elytra. And here's how to make invisible armor in vanilla Minecraft. And these are 201 Minecraft facts that you maybe missed. According to the YouTube overlords, the fastest anyone's ever subscribed to the channel is 1.5 seconds. So if you want to beat that, let's put 1.5 seconds on the clock and start the timer now. And hey, even if you subscribed after the buzzer, it means a ton, and enjoy the video. Do not underestimate tipped arrows, because silly as it may seem, we only need to shoot ourselves with one of these to go sky high. As this user shows off, if we were to give ourselves the slow falling potion effect and then use a Riptide Trident, then we'll be able to keep that same speed going right up in a 45-degree angle. And from there, forget about using rockets for your elytra, we're already well into takeoff. And as pointed out in this comment, the reason that we use arrows in the first place is that the 11-second duration of the effect makes sure that it's only going to be active on the way up, because otherwise we'd just be kind of slow falling through the air with our elytra, which is a little disappointing when you get that much speed on the way up. Here's how to make your dripstone even deadlier. Use a fishing rod. Silly as that might sound, as this user shows us, it's entirely possible. If you find yourself in a situation like this, place the dripstone underneath the block, and then when you break its support block, you can catch onto the dripstone as an entity with your bobber, and use that to throw towards your enemies. So while getting the spacing might still be pretty tough to do this, when you pull it off and kill your friend, it really is something special. And this might be the only dripstone kill that's able to top the one that Green got on Double Life. Here's how to moonwalk in Minecraft. All we need is an elytra. First off, we're gonna fly down to the ocean, and then hold up the spacebar so that we push ourselves back up to the top of the water. And then from there, we can just start walking backwards, which is a fun sight for sure, but remember, this will use up some of your elytra durability, proving that even the best dance moves have their expiration date at some point. Even though you can't see it, I'm wearing a full set of armor right now, and the way that's possible is that we're able to change our attributes through this command. So sure enough, we can give ourselves a full suit of netherite armor that no one's able to see, which would be a fun prank to pull on your friends during a PvP competition. After all, it looks like you should be easy to kill, but the truth is not as simple as that. And that isn't even the only attribute that we can change. We can also make it so that we attack a lot stronger too, letting us get god mode without your friends being none the wiser. This goat looks like it's in trouble, but don't worry, since the truth is that goats are fully capable of doing parkour, and all of a sudden this lava pit doesn't feel as inhumane. And the reason for this is because that little bit of hesitation that it does before a jump is actually the goat calculating where it has the best arc to. And you can see all those calculations visualized in this post here. It's pretty cool, which goes to show that even if you're the best at parkour, you'll never be the goat. Never take fall damage again using this one trick, since if we were to follow in the footsteps of this example, you'll notice that if you hit the crouch button right before you hit the ground, then there's a glitch in 1.19.2 that'll negate all fall damage that you would have taken. Now, timing this might be a little difficult, but if you're able to pull it off, it's quite the clutch to have in your arsenal. But one last note from the person who discovered this, you have to be jumping or falling from more than 35 blocks up in the air to get this to work. So don't say I didn't warn you if you fall from 34 and take all the damage. How many iron golems does it take to beat a warden? Well, if we set up our arena like so, we'll be able to find out that even though it's a close battle, the number is 8 iron golems to defeat one warden. Though by the end of it, we'll only have 1 iron golem left, so that's a pretty expensive way to get rid of the warden. But if you have the ingots necessary to build up 32 iron blocks worth of iron golems, I guess that's one way to make your ancient city safer. This anvil will never hurt me, because even though you do take a lot of damage from a fallen anvil, if an anvil were to pass you by, you don't take any damage, which gives for the ridiculous sight that you see in this example. Here we are in survival mode, and no damage is taken from the anvil, which I guess makes sense. It's still treated like a falling sand entity when it's moving this way, but something about seeing 31 ingots of iron just passes by unscathed, I think it's a sight worth trying for yourself. Although chests aren't currently a full block, in the old versions, they sure behave like them. And that'd be why we were able to place things like torches, rails, and even ladders on top of our chests. And while I understand why some of this got patched out, it is unfortunate that we can't run our redstone machinery over top of these. That might have made for some cool compact designs. And while you can pull these off nowadays by using update suppression, let's be honest, that just isn't the same. If we were to apply a name tag to this mob and then kill the bigger slime, did you know that even all the small slimes that come from it will still keep their name tags? Which surely means that just from one size 8 slime, we can get a whole bunch of duplicates running around. Which is good to know that if you feel bad killing one Lola, at least there's gonna be a lot more to take her place. Lily pads don't just have to be placed on water sources. They also work on waterlogged blocks, meaning that with this setup, we can place our lily pad pads directly onto our drip leaves, which offers a nice decoration to add to your next pond. And it also gives us a way to stand on top of the drip leaf without it falling down, both of which are nice to see. If you take a close look at your netherite tools, you'll notice that they're different from your regular tools in more ways than one, since that netherite ingot that we added in the smithing table also seems to have added into the handle on the sprite, giving us the only tools in the game that don't have a stick for their handle, which I think makes sense. It explains how we reinforce all of the tools' durability instead of just the top for the pickaxe. If you were to put a sapling right up next to build height and then bone meal it, it will grow, but exactly one log, meaning that even the rules of nature have to follow zoning permits. And honestly, I just think this is a really funny sight to see, and it makes me thankful that Skyblock is actually built at the bottom of the world and not up next to the build limit. Otherwise, that new tree would be a lot more disappointing. If you get a stray underwater, they'll no longer shoot you, which sounds cool, but you'll still want to stay away, since instead, they'll use melee attacks that'll inflict you with slowness. And honestly, that makes sense. Arrows do not go very far into water anyway, so I'd get why they want to put them aside and instead just attack you like this. It's a tale as old as the 1.3 update. When you enter a desert temple, you've got to disable that stone pressure plate, and failure to do so could easily be the end of your run. But even knowing that plan, mistakes can happen. So whether it was you, a friend, or maybe the rabbit that triggered the plate, the fact still stands that we need to fix this, and fast. And to do that, there's actually a simple solution. As you'll notice, by breaking the pressure pad and the block that it's on, we can fill that space with a water bucket to flood the explosion chamber. And from there, the TNT detonates, but it doesn't delete the blocks or cause us any harm up here, letting us still claim those treasure chests all the same. Elytras are a great asset to have, but having to beat the dragon before you get one could be something of a hassle. So if you found the end portal and want to jump to the good stuff, all you need is a piston to make it work. As Mysticat shows, pushing yourself with a piston underneath the portal is enough to teleport us to the relative coordinates in the end. So if you got a slow falling potion and a handful of ender pearls, we can quite literally find the end city loot before even attempting the dragon fight. When you think of space travel, you're probably picturing something like this, but it turns out a boat can work just as well. Let me explain. See, on Bedrock, if you were to put a boat on top of a pad of slime blocks, bounce on top of it a couple of times, and then get in, then we can ride that sucker sky high. And if you ask me, that's definitely the weirdest and the cheapest way to reach the stratosphere. So if you're tired of building the traditional elevator or ladder, then this will definitely offer some new leverage. If you've played around with name tags, you're probably well aware of the different Easter eggs certain names have. And while people will try to get you to believe that the Jeb name tag does more than it does, there is more that we could do using the Dinnerbone or Grum tag. See, the game is coded in such a way where even players will turn upside down when given these names, which means Dinnerbone's account is also shown to be upside down. But in Bedrock, we can experience that ourselves. If not signed in, change your name to Dinnerbone or Grum, and you'll be upside down just the same as they are. Over the years, Minecraft has slowly added in new ways for world generation. And while most of us have messed around on a super flat or amplified world, have you ever seen one like this? This here is called the debug world, and it's a holdover from the game's development process. But you can't access it normally. To get this, you actually have to hold the shift key while you're scrolling through the world options, and then bam, it's there. And honestly, there's not much to do here since you're only stuck to spectator mode, but if you wanted to feel like a Mojang developer, or at least show off a special world to your friends, this is a pretty good candidate. Minecraft has plenty of care put into its animations, but if you blink, you might not always appreciate them. That is, until you use this command. See, in Bedrock, it's actually possible to use the play animation command to apply different animations to the various mob models. Meaning, not only can we make a piglin dance, but we can do the same to ourselves. And the results can get pretty ridiculous. So if you want to take the time to appreciate Minecraft's vast animation library, this might be the perfect tool for your future dance party. Riptide is a fantastic enchantment, and it's definitely a powerful one when mixed with a rainstorm. But even though it's great, it still has a few quirks I can't quite make sense of. For example, if we do a side-by-side comparison of using Riptide in a shallow pool versus something with a bit more depth, the difference is night and day. And for some reason, the shallow option will always win out against the competition. And while I can't quite figure out why this could be, it does allow us to get some newfound height and distance with our trident. So next time you're looking for a boost, maybe use your water bucket instead of visiting the ocean. Villagers are not the easiest mobs to work with, and a big part of that is the fact that they can't be relocated using leads or food. So usually we just use a boat as our best option. But thankfully, there are other methods of persuasion, like talking. No joke, just interacting with the villager and sparking up a conversation is enough for them to relocate closer to you. And folks, for minor movements and adjustments, that might be all you need. So if you're tired of building a minecart system just to move one fisherman, this might be a solid alternative. And it's definitely cheaper, so that's a plus in its own right. Baby zombies are pests, to say the least. They've got a small hitbox, they're wicked fast, and good luck even trying to fight one of these with grass nearby. So to stay away from these ankle biters, maybe your new solution should be to try and grab a strider instead. Because, as you can see, these mobs are fully capable of walking on top of the other mobs. Sure, a strider outside of lava isn't the fastest, but even then, they completely negate the baby's speed, which gives us a much needed way out of Dodge, and one that I'm happy to take at whatever pace they're willing to give me. Easter eggs are almost a rite of passage when you're developing a game, but after they're in, you have to wonder how many players will discover them, if at all. Take the Desert Temple for example. While most of us are focused on the treasure and TNT that lies underneath, there's actually more than meets the eye to the top. You see, this big hollowed out spot in the roof is actually the perfect size for a fully powered beacon setup. Still don't believe me? Well, lay out the blocks as you would anywhere else, and sure enough, there's even going to be a sky roof so that the beacon can power up, which I gotta say is pretty nifty. Getting the Sniper Duel achievement is no easy task, but that's nothing Redstone can't help. And here, instead of shooting at the skeleton head on, we shoot at a target block placed directly above him, and then we rig a sticky piston and pull it away on command, meaning that after we walk 50 blocks away, we can flip the lever, activate the piston, and we'll get the achievement no problem. And hey, this will also work for the Bullseye achievement, just switch out the skeleton for a target block instead. If you've messed around with Minecraft's hidden mobs, then you've probably come across this guy, the Illusioner, who, among their many abilities, has the chance to seemingly create 3 clones for distraction. But what you might not have noticed that he doesn't create just 3 copies, he makes 4. And then after doing that, the original becomes invisible, or rather gives off the invisibility particles at its location, which I guess would be a useful tip if you could fight them, but since they're not fully implemented anyway, I think it's safe to say this is just a fun bit of info. If you have yourself a flame bow, you're able to shoot powdered snow blocks to destroy them. Though I honestly don't know why you'd do this instead of a shovel or a bucket, but it does make for a fun pastime. And who knows, it might be good for a hidden snow minigame, where you'd have to shoot the powdered snow within a sea of regular snow. And to me that feels like the kind of challenge you'd see out of Breath of the Wild. You can't see it, but there's invisible pistons here, and the way we did that is using a bug that's in Bedrock Edition. Since if you play on this version, you can make a piston invisible by breaking it while it's being powered by a repeating redstone clock. And then when you add back in the blocks and break the clock, it can still function like a regular sticky piston, which I'll admit would make for the coolest hidden base of the game if unfortunately it didn't reload as soon as you log out of the world, but still a cool glitch to experience while you're in it. Minecraft's code handles item frames in some pretty strange ways, because even though we can pick them up and place them like any other block, or decoration in this case, they're treated like entities. You can see as much when you get a bunch of them in one area. They're sure to cause a lot of lag. But stranger still, if you shoot the item out of one of these with a flame bow, then you'll actually be left with a permanently lit fire frame. Now, it doesn't give off any real light, but I guess it's a new torch design? If that's what you've been looking for, I don't know. Phantoms are one of the worst pains in the game, and somehow these monsters are always going to find new ways to be a thorn in your side. Case in point, if you ever thought that dealing with phantoms on land was a bad nightmare, then fighting them in water is sure to be a rude awakening. Because, as you can see, the creature of the night sky can do surprisingly well underwater, even attacking you when you dive into the ocean. Nope, not even the water can keep you safe from these terrors. But hey, at least you can sleep down there. I guess that's one way to avoid them. Minecarts are most players' first experience with using redstone, and most players are perfectly fine with using these railroads to get down to the mine shafts or just around their base. But if you're like me, fast isn't fast enough. And thankfully, we don't need any kind of third-party help to beef up our minecarts, but rather by just arranging the tracks in little circles, we can glitch out the minecarts to move at serious speeds. And while you might want to pop an aspirin for the whiplash, it's a small price to pay to move around your base this fast. And hey, with the help of a boat, we can even do this in a 2-person minecart, so both you and a friend can enjoy the high-powered rails as a team. Just one piece of advice, don't try this out on VR. Look, this is an easy one to miss, even if you do happen to be a crazy cat lady. But apparently, if you spawn a cat around a witch's hut in a swamp biome, it's always going to have the black cat texture. Which, come to think of it, makes some sense. After all, calicos aren't exactly known for hanging around a witch's brew. It's gotta be black to keep on brand. But that said, I do think it's kind of funny how black cats are the universal symbol of bad luck, but with a 100% chance of spawning here, luck isn't even a factor, making this Easter egg weird in a lot more ways than one. If you accidentally started a raid, you should just dig down. And the reason is because a 3-block hole will still let you attack a Ravager that's over top while staying completely safe from any of its damage. Which is good, because if you're over on ground, these mobs can chase you pretty quickly. But from down here, you're able to finish the job using nothing more than stone tools. Or if you have more blocks on hand, just build up 8, place a trap door, and that little bit of crawling will let you get close enough to hit it without it being able to look up and hit you. Both of which are much appreciated. If you've ever named an item in an anvil, you're aware that any custom name is bound to end up in italics. But strange as it may seem, Bedrock has a way to avoid that. See, over here we can use the Unicode symbol like so to keep our text upright. And the results not only look nice, but they open up a world of possibilities for pranking your friends. Which might just be your cue to give them an enchanted stone pickaxe, name it as a netherite one, and then see how long it takes for them to notice. I'm sure at some point we've all heard the classic saying that cats always land on their feet, and in Minecraft, that's a fact. But even though these felines don't suffer any fall damage when they drop, they still try to avoid the fall just the same, which I think is fair. I mean, I don't take any fall damage using a water bucket, but that doesn't exactly mean I want to do it all the time. And I think if cats were coded to fall whenever they want, we'd have some plenty weird sights. And I for one don't want the ravine next to a village turning into a litter box. Every now and then, it seems Mojang has fun coding in certain loot tables. And while some of those are dark, such as the turtles turning into bowls with lightning, others like this are just clever. As we know, if you kill a zombie, it has a rare chance of dropping a potato, which is handy, but you might want to be careful to not use a fire aspect sword here, because if you do and a potato drops, it'll be baked instead, and that'll delay your farming dreams. So while it does offer a better snack, it might not be best for your long-term return. Torches are the most obvious way to light up a build. They're cheap, you can craft a bunch of them, and they also happen to work pretty well. So most of us don't tend to look for replacements that often. But if you were to take the time and scan through all of Minecraft's various blocks, there's actually a surprising competitor. For some reason, 4 sea pickles actually give off more light than a torch in the same block. No joke, these slimy sea things can outperform Minecraft's most iconic light source. So if you're really looking for a reason to build a pickle farm, at least now you got one. While most of us use fireworks to self-propel our elytras, they do have properties outside of being rocket fuel. And even though we would typically just throw them in a dispenser for a quick New Year's show, actually there's more we can do for that presentation. You see, since these rockets function as entities, there's actually ways that you can move and manipulate them with the game's physics engine. Which in that case, partnering them with a water stream, you can actually move the rocket off course and change the flight pattern. So if you're really wanting that 45-degree angle for your perfect fireworks display, then hey, here's a way to do that. Have you ever used a gas as a cannon? Well, apparently, if you were to stand directly where the fireball spawns in like so, you can avoid taking any damage from it. And then, since it sticks in one place, we can punch it towards our enemies. And as it turns out, this is something to do with how the game mechanics don't register the fireball hitting the player if it spawns inside their hitbox. Because when that happens, it's treated like there's no impact, letting us create this semi-automatic fire hazard. The same person who made this also made Minecraft's Warden. No joke, Brandon Pierce, better known as King B-Dogs, has been a mod developer since he was 15 years old, and after working on the Aether mod, now works at Mojang Studios, where he helped out on both the Strider and the new Warden mob. Minecraft villagers have something of an odd fashion sense, and you can see as much. And the Village and Pillage update of 1.14 made that even more of a spectacle. And while the Swamp Villagers' lily pad hats are a personal favorite of mine, the librarians are equally peculiar, because it only takes a steady look at their noggin to realize that these bookkeepers are actually keeping a book on their head, which is safe to call ridiculous. But you know what? The lead artist from Minecraft confirmed that villager fashion was highly inspired by the 2018 shows of Gucci and the like. And considering that, I'd say a book beret fits right in. And hey, it probably means the villagers have good posture, for what that's worth. What do you think of when you see a wandering trader? Well, if you're anything like me, you see this as a free source of leads and leather. But that's only part of the story, since when we take the llamas away from their trader companion, we can actually breed them for some special results. No joke, all it takes is breeding the special llamas and you'll get an offspring with their same unique design, which is a pretty cool souvenir to have. So while it might still be more valuable to pocket the leads, this could be a way to dress up your next caravan, if that's something you're interested in. Now, I've seen plenty of people build their bases across the overworld and the nether, but a distinct lack of them in the end dimension, which makes some sense considering neither beds nor respawn anchors let us respawn in the house. But as you can see, if you place a bed like so underneath the overworld's end portal and then set our spawn, we can set ourselves up to only spawn in the last dimension. And at that point, you might as well socialize with the neighbors, because now you're soft locked and you're permanently stuck there. We're all plenty familiar with piglins, but maybe not like this. And to change their look like that, we'll have to head over to the nether. Then we get our piglins into a pen and flip the switch on a dispenser to equip different items, which clearly can create some odd monstrosities. Or if you want to look at it like this Reddit user, then they're just an anime girl wearing a hat. And honestly, I don't know which is worse to see. If you've ever made a mob farm, you know you're bound to get some pieces of armor mixed in with the results, which would be nice, but they're usually so battered that it just lasts little more than a few hits. Or that would be the case if we didn't try this. In Bedrock Edition, when we drown a zombie, you'll get its armor all fully repaired, meaning if you get one of these guys with a full set of armor, that'll save you 24 ingots, and you don't even have to craft it, which definitely means this is worth adding into your next zombie spawner. Obsidian takes a long time to mine, but what level of efficiency would you need to instant mine obsidian? Well, under regular conditions, it takes 1.55 seconds to mine obsidian using an efficiency 5 haste 2 netherite pickaxe, which compares to roughly 8 seconds that it would take with a regular netherite pickaxe. And as this user found out, if we go through all the data, we can see that with this give command, we can get ourselves a special level 50 efficiency pickaxe, and that'll let us breeze through obsidian even faster than creative mode. You probably know that carpets can be placed over string, but what about these blocks? Because the truth is that carpet only needs to be placed over any non-air block, which oddly enough means that it's completely fine to bridge with carpet over over water, grass, fire, snow, and even lava blocks. And while I wouldn't recommend using only a piece of cloth to keep you safe from the lava beneath, as this user did show, it's clearly possible, just maybe not the most safe. Llamas are neutral mobs, which means they only become hostile when provoked. And lucky for us, using llamas to create armchairs doesn't provoke them. Now, putting one of these in your living room by itself doesn't quite do the job. But surprisingly, all we need is a splash of invisibility to do the trick. When under this effect, we can only see the carpet, letting us get a proper selection of cushions for your sofa. And while the methods might be questionable, it's hard to deny the results. And with the help of commands, we can keep these llama helpers invisible long enough for the guests to arrive. So if you're tired of squatting on yet another stair, this might be the best solution. Most people build their elevators the old-fashioned way, and the original water elevator is about as classic as they come. But if you've got a few hundred bottles of honey lying around, you might want to keep this trick in mind. See, if we were to take all of those honey bottles and make them into a honey block, you'd notice that they don't quite have a full hitbox. And if you place 2 honey blocks like so, you can see that where they almost meet, a player's hitbox is able to interact with the water inside, letting us lift up almost like magic. And by doing this, we get to play around a lot more with how our standard water elevator looks anyway. Since if you wanted to, you could add a map art item frame and completely hide the inside. And at that point, it really does seem like magic. What if I told you that there exists in Minecraft's code a secret rabbit variant? And no, not the killer rabbit you get with this command, but actually something more sentimental. By naming a rabbit Toast with a name tag, it'll change into this texture. And what's sweet about that is that this is actually a tribute to a player who lost a pet rabbit with the same name. Mojang, clearly touched by the story, took the moniker and immortalized it for us all to see in game. So if you're looking to honor the poor thing's legacy, throw down that name tag and keep the memory alive. In the texture update of 1.14, Minecraft got a bunch of changes to its look. And while that was an impressive undertaking, when you're changing around that many textures, some are bound to be overlooked. And this is just that. As you'll notice, if you check your inventory while you're in spectator mode, you'll recognize that the barrier texture used is that of the old one. And while it's definitely not game breaking, it is a fun thing to notice. Thinking of the right name for a pet can be tough work. So if you're really strapped for options, this might be a good fallback. All we'll need is a bit of ingenuity and a complete lack of remorse. See, if we were to take one of the name tags that we got from exploring and put it into an anvil, then all we gotta do is go into our settings, change our native language, and then rewrite the name of the name tag as, well, name tag. And then once we change our language back, you notice that we're finally able to name a name tag, and use it as a name tag for our new animal. So if you want to circumvent this one Mojang rule, I guess it's the way to do it. Though I might add, your pet might hate you for it. Have you ever tried sprinting backwards? Well, it sounds crazy, but with a glitch, it's possible. See, the community's found a way that if you sprint and then immediately jump in the opposite direction, you can actually sprint backwards on Bedrock, which can come in handy when you need to escape from a primed creeper explosion. Just be sure to be careful not to run into any unwanted chasms. So how do we make this waterfall in vanilla Minecraft? Well, apparently if you have several llamas that attack your dog at the base of the waterfall, any projectiles will rise up to the top, giving us the mist effect that we're looking for. And since the spit rises up, there's no risk for the dog to take any kind of damage. Bridges are a staple in Minecraft building, but while we usually build these out of blocks, or maybe campfires, I doubt arrows are your first pick. Though as this user shows off, that might be our mistake. Sure enough, in certain versions, it's possible to hit yourself with a punch 2 arrow as it's falling to score some extra knockback. And while we'll lose some height in the process, this does work well enough to cross a gap that's dozens of blocks wide. And if you're ever being chased by someone in a manhunt, that might be all the space you need. With the new mangrove trapdoor, we can create this all-seeing eye illusion. By placing a trapdoor in front of a dropper, we get this creepy black pupil that follows you around. And if you want different colors, then place a fence behind it for some new eye colors as well. Just make sure you don't use a sea lantern. Stratters don't like to be cold, and that raises an unfortunate problem for us, since if we want them to be happy, we need to incorporate some kind of fire hazard into our builds, and that's not ideal, to say the least. But go figure, moss carpet is the proper solution. Since this carpet doesn't burn, we can use it as a protective layer for our lava, and the Stratters will be happy and warm just the same, which I'll say makes it a lot less stressful to mount one of these, and gives us quite the pleasant compromise. If you've ever messed around with a fishing rod, then you know that these things are great at pulling around different mobs. But what's even more peculiar is that we can pull around entities as well, and I don't think many of us expected TNT to be on that list. But apparently, if you cast a line towards a prime TNT block, we can move that explosive in some way. And hey, since we can also light the bobber on fire with lava, we could use it to ignite it in the same go, which is cool, but any application for this seems highly situational. In 1.19, Mojang added in the skulk biome. Don't believe me? Just watch. Now, the skulk block is coded to spread whenever a mob dies nearby, but there's not really a limit to that. Meaning if we summon a bunch of mobs on top of a skulk catalyst and then let the entity cramming take care of them, that'll eventually let the skulk spread into its very own biome, which is equal parts beautiful and concerning. Minecraft famously has its share of visual quirks, and while we've talked at length about those in the past, this one just cracks me up. See, if we were to hold a ladder as an item in our hands, it has about the same amount of depth as anything else. But when you place that same ladder on the side of a block, it turns paper thin. I mean, this ladder has less depth than a ladder item dropped on the floor. And unless we get something like default 3D in the base game, I guess it'll be a fun thing to notice going forward. If you want to play Minecraft Survival without the added challenge of, well, surviving, then Peaceful Mode is an obvious choice. Or so you thought. You see, even though this mode claims to remove all dangerous mobs, one spy seems to have slipped through the cracks. While playing on Peaceful Mode, the llama is the only mob capable of harming the player. I mean, I know spit is gross, but is it really that bad to be the only damaging thing in the mode? Well, luckily, these animals only attack when they're provoked. So in the meantime, maybe just stick to the truly passive cows for your leather, alright? To put it lightly, beds in the nether do not get along. Although, I don't think the villagers got that memo. You see, even though beds are the equivalent of charged creepers to us, for these guys, they can sleep in them just fine. Honestly, I'm a little jealous. I mean, I would much rather just craft a bed instead of having to fuel up a respawn anchor in the nether. In fairness, they're not able to respawn, so why not let them catch some sleep in the nether anyway? It's not gonna mess with balancing. But my bigger question is, how are they able to sleep with all of that light and lava going around next to them? That I've got no clue. After playing hours of Minecraft, it's easy to lose track of the different sound effects as they blend into the background, which is why you might not have recognized this. But as it is, if you break a tripwire, it actually plays the same sound effect you'll hear from the bow. As a comparison, here's the tripwire hook, and here's the bow. Which is interesting, but I also can't blame you if you never noticed it, because really, unless you're raiding a jungle temple, how often does this come up anyway? But props to Mojang, they reused the sound effect, and I was none the wiser. Minecraft's world border is an odd piece of code, and when you fly out 30 million blocks to visit, you'll see as much. But while there's been plenty of attention given to these glitches, I think this is equally strange. See, if you get a spider next to the border wall, then the mobs will start climbing it as they would any other, which I guess makes some sense, but I'd figure that since we can't place any of our blocks on it, they'd have nothing to grab onto, and it's maybe the only chance they'll ever have it climbing up to build height. Here's how to turn your boat into a turret, because as you'll soon notice, guardians can still shoot lasers out of the backseat of a boat. So if you manage to get one of these shotgun in your vehicle, it'll be a literal shotgun that you can point towards your friends. And the best part, it'll only target the other players who aren't in the boat, and it'll completely ignore you in the front seat, which is a blessing, but maybe make sure to drink an invisibility potion so that it doesn't attack you when you dismount the boat. The Lily of the Valley has the exact same texture no matter which angle you view it from, which makes for a really weird optical illusion when you start to walk around the lily. And as this video points out, it even still works like that if you stand above it and move around in a circle, which is more than a little weird, and honestly it starts to hurt my head. I'm gonna come out and say it, I don't like baby piglins. I know, that might sound harsh, but honestly, these things are good for nothing except stealing my gold. But unfortunately for us, that situation isn't bound to change, since, as coded, baby piglins will never become adults, meaning we're stuck with a couple of bratty kids running around and ruining our commerce. And honestly, if I wasn't trying to stay on the parents' good side, I'd take after Anakin and get rid of the younglings. If you crouch while on slime blocks while wearing Swift Sneak 3 boots, you'll be able to move faster on it than regular walking. No joke, this lets us go to a speed of 2.3 blocks per second instead of the regular 1.3 that we'd get from standard walking. I mean, it's still not fast, but it's a lot better than what we had before. Apparently, it's possible to stack enchanted books, which is a weird sight, but let's explain. By putting 2 books enchanted with a curse in the grindstone, it allows you to stack them instead. And this is because you can't remove curses with a grindstone, so it just glitches out the output. And then you can shift click out the end result, and it'll put them all back in your inventory. Since the 1.16 update, the Nether has been a lot more dangerous to traverse. But while we do have new hostile mobs in the way of piglins and hoglins, there is a glitch that might help ease the pain. Now, to pull this off, hold up your shield the second that you go through a portal. Then, after the dimension loads in, you'll find yourself on the other side virtually unchanged. However, the game keeps your shield held up even while you're attacking or sprinting, meaning you can fight mobs as usual while still blocking their attacks. Now, the glitch doesn't allow you to eat or place blocks while you're doing this, but the other payoff is pretty worthwhile. Minecraft has a surprising amount of flying mobs, but while we're all familiar with blazes, phantoms, and bats on that list, there are 2 unlikely candidates that also fit. Even though Strider doesn't seem much for aviation by itself, these things can actually be persuaded to the skies. Through the help of a fishing rod and a scroll wheel, all it takes to do this glitch is switching on and off of the item rapidly in your hotbar. And bam, just like that, you can fly, or at the very least fall with style on the back of your Strider. And hey, the same even goes for pigs and carrots in the overworld, though they'll have a rougher landing than the Strider does. The textures in the game are fairly simplistic, to say the least, which sometimes means it's hard to make out what's what, like the hearts you see while riding a horse. For the longest time, I never understood the texture, but thanks to user LittleDominator64 on Reddit, a closer look actually shows their saddles, which I'll admit zoomed out is still pretty hard to see, but once you put them side by side, the picture clears up, especially if you recognize the pixels of the metal bit of the spur. Now, I won't claim it's a great texture, but hey, now I know what it's supposed to be, see, and maybe you do too. The first ever mob vote for Minecraft wasn't between any of these mobs, but rather it was between the llama and the alpaca. Back in 2016, Jeb posted this unofficial Twitter poll to help fans decide whether or not it should be llamas or alpacas. And as we know, llamas won in a landslide, and I'm afraid whoever won in alpacas got a real spit in the face when they were added in. Ice boats are great, but they don't handle corners too well, especially when you're traveling at high speeds. But luckily, that's where this user's water design starts to help you out. And with this, we'll be able to travel diagonal distances without being perfectly aligned down the center, which is a huge help when you're traveling in the overworld so that you don't fall off course. So while another design might be technically faster, this one feels a lot more user-friendly. Unicorns don't exist in Minecraft, and call me crazy, but I don't think we'll get them anytime soon. But you know what's the next best thing? Getting to be a unicorn in Minecraft. Kind of. You see, by using the replace item command, it's entirely possible to put an end rod on the player's head and then become your own kind of narwhal. Is it practical? Of course not, but it definitely looks ridiculous. And honestly, the replace item command is just full of so many silly quirks anyway that if you have an afternoon, you might want to get familiar with it. Just mess around and see what you can find. It's well worth a shot. I don't think I'm breaking any new ground by calling axolotls adorable, because just look at them. But with all that cuteness, they're not very fast, though that can all change with the help of a lead. Strangely enough, if you tie up an axolotl like so, it'll start to move around at some breakneck speeds, and this works both on land or in the ocean domain. So if you're looking to get your pet some exercise outside of the bucket, it seems like a decent workout, though just keep in mind, it's tough to take it off the leash once it's on. Now, the laws of gravity don't exactly apply in Minecraft. I mean, clearly. But what's stranger than that is when Minecraft isn't even consistent on its own terms. For instance, gravel falls when there's nothing beneath it, and similarly, a lantern can only be placed with something solid above or below it. So then why does this work? Sure, the gravel is supported by the lantern, but the lantern's supported by the gravel just the same, and if you break either one, the whole thing falls apart, giving us all perhaps the most literal definition of a symbiotic relationship. You see, in Java, we see a gold nugget as just that, something that you can use to craft a gold ingot, but that's about it. But in Bedrock, it's fuel, for some reason. When I first heard of this, I thought, there's just no way. But yeah, if you try it, it does in fact burn. But it's not even a good fuel source. You need about 12 of them just to smelt up one item. But if you're looking to burn some cash, I guess this does the trick. Say you're trying to light up around your base, and you want something more than just a couple of torches. So, to solve that, you crafted a whole bunch of redstone lamps. But now your problem is, how do you power them? Sure, you could use a lever, but that's awkward anywhere you put it. And daylight sensors are only going to be on for part of the time. So what do? Well, apparently, by putting an item frame on a wooden pressure plate, that gives off enough weight to actually power on the thing. And now you got a constant redstone signal, giving you a sleek and stylish way to keep your lights on. And thankfully, without all the bulky redstone. With the way that mobs spawn, certain creatures aren't going to mix much in your world, which is fine, but it seems that some of these coded interactions just go unseen by the public. And this is no different. See, I wouldn't blame you if you've never noticed that polar bears can attack foxes, because you're probably not bringing many foxes over there anyway. But sure enough, add one to the vicinity and the polar bear will start to attack. And speaking as someone who's lost mobs to foxes in the past, I'm completely on board with that. If you've watched any TV show or movie with a police scene, you're probably familiar with the idea of one-way glass. And to my surprise, we can make that in Minecraft as well. If we were to make a room of glass and then fill every single wall with invisible item frames and map art, then any perpetrator standing inside can only see the map art. However, when we stand outside, we can see in just fine. And let me reiterate, this has to be done with invisible item frames. Otherwise, we just see that leather texture out the back. Since Minecraft has so many items, you could see a texture 100 times without taking the time to study the details. And I think the iron door fits that category. Now, from this zoomed out view, it looks the same as any door that we put in our hotbar. But take a closer look at the item itself, and you'll notice that the door doesn't have a handle in its sprite, which honestly seems like a clever detail. After all, we can't open the door without a redstone signal, so it makes sense there's no player accessible handle on the thing. And it's amazing to me how just 2 little extra pixels can really show how much care went into the design. If we place a set of white glazed terracotta like so, the patterns merge to create something of a penguin head along the bottom. And whether you think this looks more like Club Penguin or Tux from Linux, I think it's a funny detail nonetheless. But it'll definitely be hard to unsee, so might as well add some half slabs and make it a penguin peekaboo in your next build. If you drop the warden from build height to bedrock, it would still live. But if you have a 319 block drop into dripstone spikes, then that's enough to kill the warden in a single drop. So clearly the warden is a tough mob to kill, but just how tough is it? Well, looking at a comparison comparison like this, you can clearly see that the Warden's health is substantially larger than just about any other mob in the game. It's even more than the Ender Dragon. Though if the Warden's supposed to be this new unkillable mob, then why does the Wither in Bedrock Edition still have more health? Up to 50 hearts more in hard mode. Brutal. Though, as difficult as that sounds, there is an easy way to kill the Warden without using any armor or enchantments. With just a Strength 2 potion, you can get rid of the Warden before it even finishes its Sonic Boom cycle. Just build up 3 blocks tall, land some critical hits, and make sure you have enough hunger filled up to regen. Because in just one hit, a Warden can deal 45 damage, which, to put that into perspective, would mean that it wipes out more than double your life bar in a single blow. And to even withstand one hit from this thing, you'd need full Protection 2 diamond armor. And even then, that'll still only let you survive on half a heart. But while its melee attack is fierce, its Sonic Boom attack is severely underpowered. Now, it used to deal 15 hearts of damage, but now it only does 5, which still sounds like a lot until you notice that a witch can survive getting attacked by 2 Wardens without even breaking a sweat. No joke, with how the witch regens with their healing potions, it'll never die to either of these Wardens. Though, there is still one way the Sonic Boom can deal some serious damage, and we'll see that later in the video. In a lot of ways, single player can be a much riskier operation than a server. At the very least, you've got no one else to blame if something goes wrong. So, say you're playing by yourself late one night and happen to stumble into a nether river. Now, the situation does look pretty dire, but not unsalvageable. You see, one major exploit in the single player system is the ability to pause whenever you like. And that's where the saving grace comes in. By quitting and rejoining constantly, you can use the brief seconds of spawn protection each time to maneuver yourself out of the situation. Is it cheating? Sure, but hey, who said exploits have to be fair? Hidden doors are a very slick system to show off in your base, but the standard levers and buttons make for a pretty bland input to use. So that's where we need to get creative and resort to this classic bit of knowledge. Arrows and Enderman don't mix, meaning you can't even land a shot on it if the mob was stuck in place. So if we were to tuck the Enderman in a minecart like such, you notice how any arrow shot at him will physically bounce off, and even go through walls. And if we happen to tuck a target block behind that very wall, then this becomes our brand new button, and quite the spectacle too. To be honest, few things are more satisfying than landing a shot with a gas fireball, and intercepting the shot with an arrow of your own is cooler as well. But if we were to look at the mechanics at play, there's more going on than just a cool moment. See, the way that it's coded is so that the fireball when shot with an arrow will move the direction of the player's head. So shoot a fireball and then look up, that fireball's going to the sky. Or if you're looking for a real challenge, you can aim your head below and you'll shoot a fireball right towards that subscribe button for new notifications on future videos. And thank you, by the way. And while this is likely to save time with the coding process, it's barely noticeable most of the time. Because after all, if you can land that shot, you're trying to kill the ghast anyway. Oftentimes, an animator's work goes underappreciated, since if they did their job right, you shouldn't be able to notice it much. It should just fit right in. But today, I'd like to give a little spotlight to an animation you might not have noticed. And luckily, our subjects for that are these adorable sleeping foxes. See, if we move in for a closer look, you'll notice that these snoozing somethings actually have a subtle breathing animation. Is it a big detail? Not at all. But I do think it's nice to recognize the little tidbits that the developers added in. And as far as that goes, this is right up there in my mind with the sea lantern's glowing animation. If you've watched a couple of speedruns, you've probably heard the term damage boosting. That is, using the force of knockback to push us into prime locations. And in Minecraft, that works just the same. Since taking damage pushes our player slightly, we can time that with a jump to make something of a super leap. And that's best displayed with a fall damage. As this user shows, we can use the power of pain from this situation to launch ourselves up a couple of blocks. And essentially, this makes any block in the game bouncy, to some degree. Though I wouldn't recommend trying this more than once at a time. It might be too much for your life bar. This command summons a wolf, and this one summons my pet dog Graham every single time. And the only difference is that the way that I got this one was using the F3+I command, since that will allow us to copy everything about an entity, down to its exact NBT data. And folks, this will work for any mob or block that you have, meaning they could even copy everything inside a chest, including the item-specific attributes, which is a real lifesaver when you're trying to mess around in creative. And it'll save you from having to look at the wiki to figure out what exact tag you need to change for a blue axolotl. This door is locked, but that's nothing that a bit of water can't solve, since with a splash bottle of water right here, we're able to extinguish the campfire through a wall, and that'll trigger an observer to open up the door. And then if you want the system to be reusable, we just walk through, have a dispenser reignite it with a flint and steel, and that'll make sure it's ready for the next time that we walk outside. Minecraft's Warden used to look like this. Back in 2020, the Warden was developed under the nickname the Stalker, and it had two designs, one that was tall and lanky, and the other one that crawled around when it chased you. But Mojang thought it wasn't scary enough, so they scrapped it in favor of this new design, which they called the Hollowed, which did make it into the game's code, but was also scrapped. This time because it was deemed too gory for Minecraft. When lava and water mix, you get stone. So why doesn't that happen here? Well, as a bizarre addition to vanilla, the community has found that by placing blocks around the water and then a warp sign waterlogged inside, we can effectively place lava above it. And the reason this works is because even though water can occupy the same space as a sign, lava can't, which makes it think that it's on top of a full block instead of a water source. Mojang has never cared much for the laws of physics, and there have been plenty of posts made complaining about these nonsensical bits in Minecraft. I mean, we're even guilty of that ourselves. But who among us would complain about being able to become an actual waterbender? See, by using sticky pistons and honey blocks, we can make the water fall however we want it to. And then once you remove it, it'll actually stay that way. Simply build your structure, pour some water over top, and then break all of the blocks that you used when you're done. I mean, if you wanted to, you could use lava as well to make your own kind of modern art piece. Though to me, it looks more like a fire hazard. And really, however you choose to use this trick, it's sure to impress even the most seasoned of players. Trapdoors seem to make for pretty lousy traps. I mean, if you stand on top of it, most of us know what it is, so we're not going to be surprised when it flips open. But what these lack as a trap for humans, they apparently make it up as a trap for mobs. You see, if you or I were stuck in this, we just hop out. But to the animals in the game, they can't just jump on these trapdoors, so that leaves them stuck inside. But what's weirder is that from the outside coming in, they can even clear the jump. So why the difference? Who knows? But if you want a fence alternative, this might just fit the bill for your future pens. You ever wonder what it's like to be a mob? I mean, there are so many different shape-shifting and morph mods out there that I'm sure you've thought of it once or twice. And while those third-party options will give you one interpretation, there's actually a way to do this in-game. While in spectator mode, if you interact with a mob, you can actually see from their point of view, and some of which even offer up different filters and effects. So whether you want a creeper's green vision, a spider's reflective eyes, or maybe even just to be safe in a shulker shell, then by all means, go ahead and try this feature. Water isn't all that bouncy. A bold statement, I know. But that might be unfortunate, because as you'll soon find out, these fish love to bounce around. And to test that, let's set up a slime block trampoline right over here on dry land. Then all it takes is spawning a cod in place, and you'll see that sucker take off to the moon and back. It looks like it's having a blast, but if you're gonna do this, maybe give the fish a health boost or something, so that this party doesn't turn into a murder mystery. So even though these fish might not like dry air, I think this might make their stay a bit more enjoyable. If you've ever pieced together a chicken farm, then you know that these mobs can lay a ton of eggs, and normally we're left cleaning up that overflow. And while that's true, it's apparently not a universal fact, since this chicken right here is incapable of laying any eggs across its lifetime. And what makes this one so special? Well, the reason is that chickens spawned from a baby zombie jockey are coded to not lay eggs ever, and this is likely to prevent any kind of zombie from picking up that egg item and never despawning. This isn't an end portal, but actually it's just a clever design using skulk blocks, and since these new blocks have a texture that looks like outer space, we can use them to create some new illusions in the other dimensions. And for another illusion, simply take some of the new skulk vein, overlay it on a diamond block, and bam, you've got yourself a blue version of the magma block. Truth be told, villagers do not seem like the smartest mobs, and more often than not I'm racking my brain trying to figure out their logic. But occasionally, they have their moments. For a case study, take a look at this unemployed villager. Not too impressive, right? But add any workstation within a distance of 32 blocks, and they'll start some serious pathfinding. No joke, these NPCs can even work through mazes to try and find a job, which I'll admit is serious dedication. But why that same villager refuses to restock when the block is right next door, that I'll never understand. Minecraft is known to reuse a few textures, and while they can sometimes be groan-worthy, or even confusing, other times it goes unnoticed. Like, take the smooth and regular stone blocks for example. Looking at them like this, the difference seems pretty big, and honestly their biggest similarity seems to be in the name, not the texture. But add a pressure plate to the top, and now it's easier to see. As is, it's tough to recognize which block is which when the borders share the same texture. So while it's a very minor detail, I do have to commend Mojang here. They reused a texture, and I was none the wiser until it was pointed out. When Crying Obsidian got added into the 1.16 snapshots, it was exciting for a few different reasons. Obviously, respawn anchors are cool in their own right, but the block actually has a past prior to that. So while you might not have played Minecraft back in 2011, there is still a way to relive that history. When you go into the resource pack tab, you'll see something called program art, and after you turn that on, you'll notice that the Crying Obsidian texture now reflects the old block's glory days. And with that, finally, Jeb's promise of it getting added in was fulfilled. Every time that you break a Skulk Catalyst block, it drops 20 XP, which means that if we carry these around, we'll have a quick and portable way to repair your mending tools whenever you step away from the base of your farms. And since it's not exactly easy to get a bunch of bottles of enchanting, I think you'll find this is a lot more reusable. According to Mojang, honey is the stickier block when compared to slime blocks. But why do these only stick to slime blocks then and not the honey block? Well, even though it's on the bug tracker, the reason is because honey is 14 by 15 by 14, while slime is a full 16 pixels on each side. And that would be why we can't put our vines, glow lichen, and the rest on top of these, just because there's not enough room. Here's how to trade your dirt for emeralds. It's just gonna take a few steps. First, we have to play on 1.19 so that we can turn our dirt into mud using the water bottle, and then dry out that mud block on top of dripstone for the clay blocks. After that, we break the clay blocks for the clay balls, and then we trade those with a stonemason, finally getting us our emeralds. So it is quite the process, but being able to literally go from dirt to dollars is worth it in my eyes. Without breaking any blocks, how would you get out of this hole? Well, silly as it seems, a door is actually the solution, and maybe the best one. Since if you place down a door and then flip it back and forth, you'll be able to hop up the steps of the door and go up 2 blocks at a time, which can be exceptionally useful for helping you get out of a hole or an animal pen. And that way, any of the other mobs that are trapped in there with you, they won't be able to hop up the blocks while you're pillaring out to escape. If you've ever gotten rid of a wandering trader, then you know that llamas can be an aggressive bunch. Sure, it's to be expected, they're a neutral mob, but something about getting spat on just adds insult to injury. So if you too are tired of getting saliva sprayed by these bullies, there's actually a way to turn the tables. You see, a shield is decent for blocking, but we can actually go one step further and even deflect the spit. No joke, with a weapon and the proper timing, it's actually possible to hit the spit back at your foe. And now I just wish that it would give you the Return to Sender achievement as well. That'd be amazing. Now, on this show, we've talked plenty about the different quirks and idiosyncrasies that you can find in Bedrock, and with the 1.17 update came a slew of new ones. To see such, take a look at this axolotl here. Now, if we were to tie up the animal with a lead and then pick it up with a water bucket, then when we place it back down, it'll still have that leash attached. And the reason being is that in Bedrock, all of the NBT data is saved when you put the mob inside the container. So if you need another inventory slot, this is one way to bury the lead. Fall damage is something of a great equalizer in the Minecraft world, because no matter the enchantments, the potions, or even the hearts that you got, there's an upper limit for all of that. But have you ever wondered how high that could be? Well, as it turns out, if you were to mix together a full set of Protection 4 and Feather Falling 4 netherite armor, a Turtle Master potion with Resistance 4, an enchanted golden apple, and then land on a pad of hay bales, that'll let you survive a fall of 4,504 blocks on half a heart. But really, just use a water bucket. When you start 1.19, you'll want to collect a bunch of powdered snow. And why is that? Well, with this powdered snow, we can make a farm like this to filter out our magma cubes down from their biggest size to a smaller stature. And once they're small, we have our frog eat them and get ourselves a handy frog-light farm. Especially if you build this near a magma cube spawner from a bastion. Or you could build it in a mountain and they'll eat the goats instead. As you'll see, back in the beta snapshots for Bedrock, there was a glitch that let frogs eat any goats that got nearby. So even if they can't eat fireflies, at least the goats weren't poisonous. And perhaps unfortunately, this was promptly patched out, since it was just some leftover prototype code. If you don't have an ender chest, then hiding your valuables is a tricky business. And while we've talked plenty about the creative ways to stash your loot, this might just be a new favorite. While playing in Bedrock Edition, if you push a block into a chest minecart, then, even though it's still there, you can't see the entity. And here's the best part, we can open it up just the same. Just make sure your crosshair lines up like such where you can't see the outline of the block, and then you'll be safe to tuck something in the bookcase and know it's safe and sound. And hey, as an added bonus, finally bookshelves have an actual use. Trapdoors and ladders make a great pair. And because of that, you might have noticed this quirk when you put it in your world. You see, by having a trapdoor like such, you can actually climb it to the top just as you would a standard ladder. But that said, it even works if you put the trapdoors and ladders in a pattern like this. And once you see how we can climb one of these, then it's a lot easier to see how this feature works. But trust me, it's only good for a party trick. Trapdoors are much more expensive than ladders, so you're much better placing your planks on the old favorite. Besides, it even looks better too. I swear, even after playing Minecraft for 9 years, I'm still constantly learning new things to do. For example, I've played Bed Wars and Hunger Games hundreds of times with my friends, meaning I've shared countless pieces of armor, weapons, etc., any item you can think of. And somehow, in all of that time, I never realized that you could just hold down the Q key to throw out a steady stream of items. No, I would never do that. I would always just end up throwing it out of the inventory screen or mashing the Q button instead. And really, I don't know if it's all that practical, but now I know it's there, and maybe you do too. Traveling across the different Minecraft biomes is a lot of fun, but But while you're doing all that exploring, it's easy to miss the small details you pass by. And if you did take the time to stop and smell the roses, you might realize this cool fact about the flower forest biome. See, if you were to bone meal all of the blocks in the area, a grueling task, I know, you'd start to see a flower gradient like so. Since the game only generates one type of flower per each block in the space, you get some cool sights to see. So while you'll likely never see it this readily apparent again, I guess you and the forest now share a little secret. Finding Minecraft details can be a tricky process, and sometimes the real secrets don't come from the game itself. For instance, take the Iron Golem. Now, in-game, I always figured this red pixel functioned as the pupil. But no, all it takes is one look at the official 2019 Valentine's Day post from Mojang's Instagram to see that the red part is actually the Golem's sclera. So does that mean that this is canon? Well, I guess I don't know. After all, there was the famous Bluestone incident from the Village and Pillage trailer, so maybe promotional art isn't always to be trusted. But if I had to bet on my assumption versus the artist's rendition, I'd pick the official every time. Beacons basically define the later stages of the game in Minecraft, but what these are good for in haste, jump boost, and speed, apparently they lack in regeneration. Now, that's not to say that they don't give regen, clearly they do, but a glitch in the code prevents these beacons from giving the full regen after activated. So, to change that, we can fix this glitch with another exploit, and use this system to deactivate and reactivate the beacon for a faster regen, going from a full regen of 72 seconds with the normal one to roughly 51 seconds with our modified. So if you're looking to save some seconds next time you're in danger, then this workaround's what you need. Nobody likes being on the receiving end of knockback, but while it's a pain to be tossed around, this might make it necessary. See, in Bedrock, it's possible to repeatedly punch against your buddy's shield. So if we do that, we can use the knockback that we receive as something of a boost to the new heights. And then we could alternate our positions with them to net some serious verticality. And it might just be the way you and your pal escape out of any future rock in a hard place. And the best part about it is that this is basically just an unintentional feature, so it's not a glitch that's gonna get patched. But whether Mojang takes it out or not, one thing is for certain. It's a trick that's sure to give you and your friends quite the boost. Dragon's Breath is a tough item to get, and that's in no small part thanks to the fact that you need to fight a dragon to get it. But if you want some lingering potions and tipped arrows, then it's a necessity. So if you want to get your supply as quickly as possible, this might speed up the process. See, instead of filling our bottles from the magic on the floor, we can just take as much as we want from the dragon's head. And while it's a glitch, it is nice to have our stuff bottled at the source. Keeping monsters away from your base is a big problem to solve. And while there are simple solutions, like constructing a big wall of blocks, those aren't always the prettiest. So thankfully, these azalea bushes do the trick just the same. No joke, in the current versions, it's possible to place down a ring of these bushes, and that alone will stop the monsters from getting any closer. Which is ridiculous for sure, but it's hard to criticize something that works this easily. And hey, it'll give you an early start in building a hedge maze, for what that's worth. Render distance can make a world of difference, and it's one of the more clear benefits to playing Minecraft on a beefy computer. But it turns out, on Bedrock, that draw distance is even more impressive. See, you might not have noticed, but with the way that the game loads, we're able to stand at the main end island and see the outer islands within view, which I'll admit is a surreal sight. And it's made even more enjoyable by the fact that Bedrock handles render distance loading substantially better than Java. And I imagine this will make pulling off your next flying machine journey a lot easier to do, just as long as you don't fall off. If you know how to use it, then Redstone can open up a new world to Minecraft. Truly, in the right hands, it's an amazing resource. But as useful as it is, sometimes Redstone can be a bit unsightly. But don't worry, with an item frame and a map, it's possible to make that redstone basically invisible. As you'll notice, item frames are entities like you and me, meaning we can overlap their hitboxes with the redstone like so. And then once we add in some map art to match the floor, we've got some unnoticeable redstone. And honestly, I hope this will let some builders finally mess around with the redstone side in their builds, because that's a holy matrimony I'd be happy to see. The days in Minecraft are pretty short, and at only 20 minutes per cycle, you're sure to see these sun and moon textures fairly often. But if you ever wondered how that rotation works, after all, Minecraft's a game of blocks, so an orbit like this seems pretty nonsensical. But turns out, we can actually find the science on display. See, if you head underneath Minecraft's world, you can see the sun and the moon are constant objects, even rotating under us in the void. And that gets readily apparent when you play on something like Skyblock where there's no bedrock layer to hide it. But more importantly than that, it gives us this cool shot of a sun on the black sky, and for me that's worth it. Jump boost is great, but it's not always a joy to brew up the potion, especially if you don't have plenty of rabbit's feet on hand. And while there is some way to get more height to your jump by doing damage boosting and the like, maybe let's try this instead. Trust me, it'll be a lot better for your health bar. You see, bubble elevators aren't just useful for getting up to your penthouse apartment. But if you build a formation like this, it actually lets you get off a 2-block tall jump. Sure, it can be tough to time, but when the alternative is lighting yourself on fire, I think the choice is clear. Under the surface, Minecraft has plenty of hidden features that I don't think anyone would find naturally. Like, case in point, let's say you're raiding a woodland mansion, and for some reason, you brought along your trusty blue sheep. But to your surprise, just as you start to fight the evoker, he turns on the very thing you love and makes your blue sheep into a red sheep. Now, that's weird in its own right, but I think it's even funnier that the game rule mob griefing actually can prevent this from happening. Because really, when it comes to mobs damaging your stuff, this is what we're all worried about. Nothing else comes close. Here's how to beat the warden using just some wool blocks. Now, as you might know, wool can be used to deafen the sound that comes from the vibrations, which if we take that to the logical extreme, if we then place wool around a warden as it's climbing out of the ground while spawning, we'll be able to make it both trapped and oblivious to what's happening around it, which at that point means we can walk around the perimeter and then it'll despawn after time when it doesn't get any stimulus. It's a bold move, but it can work out if you've got the right skills. It's hard to notice, but the game actually has a green vignette that can show during the nausea effect, but you're only able to see this if you change this setting in accessibility, because when the distortion effects are lowered, the game switches out the typical warbly effect for a kind of green tint that creeps in on your screen, which is a lot less, well, nauseating, and honestly at this point it feels like the effect's not even that annoying. A mild inconvenience at worst. If you've messed around with the summon command, you know Minecraft has some weird entities in the code, and since they're not traditional, it means we get some odd behaviors when you mix them, like you'll see here. Now when you light a block of TNT on fire, it turns into a prime TNT as you would expect, but what might surprise you is that if we then shoot this new entity with arrows, our projectiles just bounce off, which means that the only way that we're mixing TNT with arrows is through command blocks. Even though Minecraft's textures are simple, a surprising amount of care can go into them, and if you take the time to really study a certain block, you might notice something new. For instance, some of you might be surprised to see that the prismarine texture is actually animated. What's happening here is that the block is slowly transitioning from a bluish hue to a green one, and honestly, without the help of a time lapse or a chart, I would have no way to be able to notice. But I guess this settles any debates going forward. Is it blue? Is it green? Well, it's both. Recently, it came to my attention that killing a wither skeleton with a charged creeper actually gives a 100% chance of it dropping a skull, which is cool, but clearly importing creepers to the nether is not that practical. Though, for those on Bedrock Edition, there might be a more viable option. You see, in that version, if a charged creeper kills a stray, then it also drops a guaranteed wither skull. And since lightning and creepers only occur in the overworld, this seems a lot more forgiving. And if you do have Bedrock, then by all means, why not give this a shot and make those Java friends jealous? You might not see it, but there's actually a fish living inside of this block. Sure enough, you can waterlog mangrove roots and the water doesn't flow out, meaning a fish can live safely inside. All you have to do is place a tower of 2 root blocks, fill the top one with regular water, and then the bottom one with a bucket of fish. After that, break the bottom block, and you've got yourself the weirdest fish tank. But that's not the only mob stuck where it's not supposed to be, since if you actually look at these walls we placed nearby, you notice that there's a frog placed inside of the gap. As RaiseWorks pointed out, the frog's hitbox is so small that it can squeeze right in between 4 walls placed in a square like so. And if that seems like a tight fit, you wouldn't be wrong, but now it's time for me to tell you how we squeezed 6,402 mobs into just this one boat. If we were to fill up the inventories on a chest boat, a llama, and ourselves with shulker boxes, and in each of those shulker boxes we filled them up with a beehive full of 3 bees each, that would add up to 6,400 mobs. And then we add on 2 parrots to our shoulders for the remaining 2. And since we could put chest boats as a passenger inside of a minecart, that means that us and our new friends can tackle both the high seas and the high speeds of a roller coaster. But that's only scratching the surface for how useful these chest boats can be. Now, in 1.19, don't build your super smelter like this, but instead, do it like this. Since one chest boat positioned like so can fill 9 hoppers simultaneously, we can make an extremely efficient furnace array for pretty cheap. And for an added bonus, use blast furnaces instead of the regular furnace. And the end result will be 18 times faster than what we're used to. But despite all of those impressive feats, the chest boat still has one fatal flaw. If you drop it onto a slime block, it'll bounce a bit before breaking into blocks and sticks, just like the old boats used to. You don't have to play Minecraft for long to know that Endermen do not like to be looked at. But while a passing glance is enough to get them mad, apparently they're pretty honorable in a staring contest. Sure enough, the next time you look an Enderman in the eyes, all you gotta do is maintain eye contact. Doing that is enough to lock them in place. Seriously, they won't even attack. They'll just stare at you for as long as you stare at them. Now sure, after you look away, they will still attack, but maybe you can take that extra time and even just regen before the fight. After all, if you know that a brawl is coming, why not prepare for it? Sometimes you gotta pick the lesser of 2 evils. So while sweet berries might be a pain while you're walking around, turns out they're invaluable when it comes to falling. You see, the way that Minecraft calculates fall damage, there are certain things that can reset your fall distance in midair. And as it happens to be, berry bush damage is one of them. Getting pricked by one of these, even if you fall from sky limit, is enough to take away all the fall damage and keep you safe. And if you really don't want to take any chances, this even works with baby bushes, which won't even prick you on your way down, which I'd definitely call a sweet deal. Snow golems make for great friends, but they are the best protectors. And really, unless they're attacking blazes, these snowballs are not good for much. Though if we take some blocks from the nether, we can effectively turn that around. See, in Bedrock Edition, these snowball entities work fairly different, letting them even catch catch on fire when thrown like so, and that can let us turn our snow golem pals into vicious flamethrowers. If you ask me, that's a welcome improvement. So if you make sure no mobs can jump in and kill them, this might be the best way to defend your base. Bedrock, as we're all familiar with it, is a pretty strong block, but obviously we've also seen our fair share of glitches and bugs to break the unbreakable. And while that's true, this might be both the strangest and the simplest method in my book. See, in Bedrock Edition, if you lay a cauldron underneath a piece of bedrock, or any block for that matter, and then fill it in twice with powdered snow buckets, the result is a powdered snow block in place of that bedrock. And what's even better is that we can reuse that same snow for doing it all over again. Leads definitely serve their purpose, but while they're good for guiding mobs, they aren't as much for decoration, though a bucket is all we need to flip that switch. See, if you were to place an axolotl next to a fence post, tie the two together with a lead, and then pick up the axolotl again in the water bucket, the lead will still be knotted to the pole, which is bizarre, but it'll let us get that extra detail for Minecraft building. And if you ask me, that's a lot easier than having an invisible rabbit nearby. Hiding an entrance in your base is no easy task, because how do you balance something that's practical to use, but also keeps out the intruders? Well, if you take after this Reddit user, we might just have our answer. See, while tridents are great for launches around the skies, they can also let us enter the crawling animation without a trapdoor. And with that, we can essentially create a 1x1 entrance to a hidden room. Then, after covering the wall with some kind of custom map art, we can slide past the item frame and into your lair with ease. On the whole, I love the different stone types that Minecraft has added in, but somehow I never seem to have enough when I go to use one. So if you too find yourself running dry on granite, diorite, or andesite, don't sweat it, because apparently if you have enough quartz, you can actually craft each of them. And while some of this I get, the granite recipe just makes no sense to me. You need a quartz and a diorite to do it, so someone tell me how 2 white items are able to make this color, because I've got no clue. But I guess I don't have to understand the logic to use it, and I'll definitely be crafting this in the future. Scale in Minecraft is a funny thing, and while some of it makes no sense, like why are the husks taller than the zombies, other examples are pretty satisfying. Say we grab ourselves a dropper. Now, by itself, there's nothing too satisfying about it, but throw a button on the face and you'll notice that it's the exact right size for the dropper's mouth. And in my book, it makes the dropper look more like a wine bottle than a piece of redstone. Though I'll add that this only works with certain orientations, because thinking about it, it's probably for the best that we don't gag them anyway. But if you want a neat detail for your building, this might fit that bill. Instead of placing all these flowers by hand, we're gonna do it with a bow. Strange as it may seem, using the place feature command, we're able to swap out an entity for a decoration. So if we set up the execute command like this in a command block, that'll be able to turn our spray of arrows into a beautiful flower garden. And if you want to make this whole process even faster, I'd recommend using a multi-shot crossbow so you get even more of a spray at the end. Just make sure not to shoot anybody while they're enjoying the roses. How did we make these minecarts fly? Well, the reason's bees, because if you summon in a minecart riding as a passenger on top of a bee, it'll actually still let the minecarts fly around and they'll still be functional. And then if we take after this user and make the bees invisible, we have quite the mini game to climb up to the top of the base. Just make sure you don't hit the sneak key, otherwise you'll be in a spot way worse than last place. Fall damage is one of the most common ways to die in Minecraft, so we're often looking for ways to avoid it. But while that's usually done through the help of water buckets, it turns out that powdered snow might be the best option. And a big reason for that is this glitch where we can land on a carpet on top of powdered snow blocks and not take any fall damage, even though it's covered, letting us not only create virtually invisible landing pads, but also build them in the nether. And that's a lot more robust than the water that we're used to. It's an old fact of life. Walls make for a great defense, but when you're in a pinch, it's not always easy to build your own barriers, or get through them. So what if instead we could walk through an existing one? Well, it turns out that's not as crazy as it sounds, because as you'll notice, these ender pearls are not just good for teleporting away, but also inside. And if you aim them like such, we can manage to glitch through solid walls to escape, which I'll admit is risky. After all, the ender pearl is going to deal some damage when you land, but if you have the health and time to spare, this could get you out of both sight and harm's way with a simple setup. And if your foe can't teleport, that should be the end of the chase. Boats haven't always been the easiest to use, and some players definitely remember the pains of crashing one of these on a floating obstacle. But thankfully nowadays, it's fixed so that when you crash, you just subscribe to the channel. But even with that fixed, these boats still have plenty of quirks to see. In Bedrock, it's entirely possible to tie your boat to the other end of a lead and drag the thing around. Why you would do this, I have no idea, since I'd rather just break the boat and carry it that way. But if you need to, I guess it works. With so many blocks to choose from, Minecraft is bound to have a few repeats. And while it's to be expected, it makes it all the more impressive when Mojang hides those variants. Take the jungle log for instance. As such, it doesn't look too much like the standard oak selection, but if we flip our oak log to its side, then it's a bit more jarring. See, what's happening here is that the jungle log is actually a color shift of the sideways oak texture, even having the same details when you overlap them. Which I'll admit is pretty cool, since I always thought their similarities stopped and started with the planks texture. But even if they do match, that color combination is still hideous. Seeing through walls would be a superpower that most of us would love to have. But Steve isn't exactly Superman, so the idea is a pipe dream. or it would be if we stayed at this FOV. See, the way that field of vision works in Minecraft, if you drink a Speed 2 potion and then turn your slider up to Quake Pro, then you can get some really wide vision. And then, all it takes is lining yourself up next to a wall, and the job is done. So if you suspect that your friend might be hiding things around your base, this might be the perfect shot to find it. And it'll make Green's job of hiding his even tougher to do. In 1.19, we can turn stone into glazed terracotta, but watch closely, because if you blink, you might miss something. First, we bone meal our stone into moss, then grow a 2x2 spruce tree to change the moss into podzol. Use a shovel to turn the podzol into pathland, put a block over the path block to turn it back into dirt, and now right-click with a water bottle to turn that dirt into mud. We're almost there, just trust me. After that, drain the mud block on some dripstone, and now we've got clay, which we can cook into terracotta, and then cook again for our final step, glazed terracotta. Even though you can't see it, it's not a surprise that the ground underneath this snow layer is made up of grass blocks, and you can break it to see as much. But while that grass might look normal when we place a torch, when it's underneath the snow, it's something entirely different. And through the help of an Enderman, we can see that texture for ourselves. See, if an Enderman were to pick up one of these snowy grass blocks, they'd ditch the snow and just be left with a strange silver turf instead. And while it doesn't offer much functionality outside of being a grass block, it is still a cool souvenir. If you've ever filled up the end portal, you're probably familiar with how this story goes. You place in the Eyes of Ender, brace yourself, and then jump in for the fight. Only this time, we're still standing on top, which is pretty weird, but it turns out that on Bedrock, it's possible to stand in the portal without teleporting. All we need to do is place a set of fences underneath like so, and we can essentially make it off limits. Or at least it's off limits until someone breaks that wooden fence, which is a small hurdle to cross. What if I told you we can place lava underwater? Well, that probably sounds ridiculous, but it turns out that there's a way to do this without getting obsidian. See, with the way that cauldrons are coated, we can push one of these into the river, fill it with lava, and then it'll work just the same. So if you've ever wanted to burn alive at the bottom of the ocean, I guess there's a way to do that. But at least we don't light on fire while we're doing it, for whatever that's worth. As we all know, when you see something, the trouble's unseen it. And that exact thing happened to me when I took a closer look at Minecraft signs. Now, when you face them dead on, they seem just fine. Normal, if anything. But once you step to the side, it's easier to notice this hidden detail. And in fact, the text that we typed floats right off the sign, which is a bit peculiar, but I guess it makes some sense. After all, you can't expect the texture to change itself, so the solution is to generate the text on top of it. But even if I know the reason why it's there, it doesn't make recognizing it any less weird. Instead of harvesting your crops like this, try a redstone lamp. Because with the way that the mechanics work for the game, these crops can only exist when there's a certain amount of light source nearby. Which in turn means that if we were to flick this switch off, break one of the crops, the rest will then update so that they're broken too in the new light level. And then you can turn back on the lights and pick up all the new crops that you just harvested, which is probably the simplest amount of redstone that you need to make an automatic crop farm. Ever since the 1.16 update, we've now had support for adding different emojis in the Java edition of Minecraft-related items, like pickaxes, swords, and tridents, and even potions, both splash and regular, which seems like a pretty minor feature to add, but it could make for some extra cool signage, especially if you're trying to sell these different items in a shop. Enchanting your items is a great thing. Whether it's a sword, a elytra, even a hoe, there are plenty of different ways to juice up your favorite items. But what might just be the biggest flex of them all is to take something simple like a flint and steel and spice that up as well. I'm totally serious. In case you didn't know, it's possible to actually enchant this thing, even giving it the mending enchantment. And now, if we're being practical, I have no clue why you do this. But to be at a point in the game where you not only can apply mending and breaking to the thing, but also gather enough XP to charge it, that's next level. Beacons are a great asset in your Minecraft world, and part of that is the abundance of colors to choose from for your beacon beam. But while we're all familiar with doing this using stained glass blocks and glass panes, there's actually one more to that list. See, beacons are transparent blocks, meaning our beam can phase through them just the same. But while you don't see anything different here, look what happens when you use a beacon in conjunction with a glass block. And in fact, the results are the exact same that you would get from using a white stained glass block in its place. And what's the practical use for this? I've got no clue. I mean, obviously it's more cost effective to use white glass, but I guess this is possible. Bedrock Edition is known to have more than a few quirks in its code, and while some of those can be infuriating, others are just hilarious. Like how you can make a fully functioning zip line in your Minecraft world. No joke, if you start swimming in a water column and then step out, you'll still be swimming even in midair. From there, give yourself some chains as a ceiling, and you can sail along this without a care in the world. Granted, you'll need to make sure to have blocks above your head to stay in that state, but that's a simple trade-off for the chance to break the game's physics engine. When you're on multiplayer, it's nice to offer some starting gear to the new players. But how do you guarantee that that stuff only goes to those who need it, instead of the rich players who are looking for free handouts? Well, odd as it may seem, this book could do the trick. As RaiseWorks demonstrates, having a book written like so can overload the data and cause a player with too many items in their inventory to get kicked out when they open up the chest. But if you have nothing, it works as planned. And though I barely understand the science behind it, it is a cool system. It only takes one look at the Vanilla Tweaks website to see that Minecraft might have a few texture quirks. And while some of those are mildly infuriating, like the jungle door inconsistency or the smoker's unsymmetrical corners, this one's just plain weird. To see this, place a turtle egg and a diamond into your inventory. Notice any similarities? Here, maybe this helps. As it turns out, the diamond and the turtle egg sprites have the exact same shape. And honestly, I never would have noticed this on my own, but now that I see it, yeah, it's gonna be hard to unsee. If you have yourself an allay, you also have yourself a mobile light source. Let me explain. Using the dynamic lights feature in something like Optifine or a data pack, it's possible that if you give your allay an item that can be a light source, such as a torch or a lantern, then it'll carry that around and still light up the area around you. And hey, since we didn't get fireflies in 1.19, I think this is the closest we got in the wild update. Droppers got a massive change in 1.19, but barely anyone's talking about it. And now, droppers have much less variability when they shoot out an item, which offers up huge changes for the technical community. Since now, as Ilmango shows, we can use droppers for a simple chunk loader like this, which lets your farms keep producing 24/7, even if you don't stand nearby AFK. With your Riptide Trident, we can go up to 200 blocks into the sky. And the way we do this is that if we wait for a rainstorm and then continuously bounce off a slime block bounce pad, each time that we bounce back down, we'll launch higher than the last, which in turn gets us more momentum, and we can continue to do this until we reach so high in the sky that the rain becomes snow, meaning we're so high up in the atmosphere that it starts to get cold up there. And while that's all fun and games, just make sure that you actually land on the slime block when you're ready to come down. We don't need to go from your highest high down to your lowest low. Even though Minecraft's a sandbox game, there are certain rules we're not supposed to break, like placing blocks above a certain height. I mean, why else would it be called the build limit? But that doesn't explain why this site works like so. See, by using a method the community's found for mixing falling sand entities with invisible shulkers, we can essentially make our own builds both above and below the world limit, which can result in some pretty wild sights for sure. So if you're looking for a project in creative, it's a fun tool to use. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that farming in Minecraft is a lot easier than it is in the real world. I know, that sounds crazy. And we might have the game's wonky physics to thank for that. See, even beyond being able to bone meal crops to maturity in a matter of seconds, there's also some weird magic that happens with the farmland itself. As you'll notice, even though the only thing between this water source block and farmland is air, the crops are hydrated just the same. And I know that there are water droplets in the air, but even this seems hard to believe. Trapdoors, despite being made out of wood, cannot be caught on fire. And you'll see as much when we place a lava source block in the middle here. Because in this setup, there's no air for the fire to spread to, so the trapdoors stay safe. Even though this whole setup looks a little bit precarious, so I still wouldn't recommend getting too close to the lava. Even if the trapdoors can't catch on fire, you certainly could. The Warden's Sonic Boom might not deal a lot of damage to us, but it can be devastating against the Ender Dragon. And as this example shows, with enough of the Wardens in the end, we can effectively blast the dragon off course. I mean, the dragon can't even get back to her perch. It's that bad. If you were to put string over lava, then no players can hear it, but they can still fall in. And the reason being is that lava only makes noise when there's air blocks above it. So the string stops that. And since oddly enough, the string doesn't burn, it'll stay there long enough for you to convince one of your friends to fall in. And if you are that friend, take this as a lesson to make sure to look out for lava, even if you can't hear it nearby. Minecraft is famous for its random generation based off a string of integer values. And I think we've all come across these so-called seeds when booting up one that we found online or typing in one of our own. Though on the chances you don't do either, how does the game come up with a seed? Well, the answer is more straightforward than you might think. When left to automatically generate a seed, the game will just use the system's time as that seed. And through this, we're able to access a sliver of the over 18 quintillion possible seeds. And I doubt any of our clocks have enough time to showcase all of those. Horses aren't the most ideal form of travel. I mean, you have to spend the time to painstakingly breed for the right stats, only for your special steed to max out at a speed that's slower than the Elytra, or it would be, unless you're on Bedrock. Over here, there's a bug that if you give the parents a potion effect like speed and then breed them together, the offspring will continue to be faster. Do this again for a couple of generations, and we can get some supercharged horses, which is definitely a sight to see. And at this point, they're hard to use for a completely different reason. Much like glass blocks, you can use glass panes to change the color of a beacon beam, and then if you stack them, you can change that color multiple times, which allows us to get this kind of pixel art that you're seeing here. All we have to do is just build a shape out of stained glass panes inside the beacon beams, and we'll have a fully visible invisible, and fully functional beacons still to see. And then, if you want to have a break in the beacon path without blocking it off, wall blocks do the trick, since the beacon isn't visible while it's on the inside, but it still goes through the top since it's transparent. A nice discovery for sure. Here's how to trap the admin. With this user's setup of command blocks, we're able to establish a nether portal, change their game mode to adventure mode, and then permanently trap them inside because they can't access their commands or their inventory. And again, because they're in adventure mode, they won't be able to break any blocks either. So they'll just be stuck there to the end of time, or until some other operator wants to help them get out, whichever one happens first. Minecraft Redstone is a beautiful thing, but it's not always the most intuitive. And a key instance of that would be this example's so-called leaf stone. Now, that might sound silly, but it's actually true that leaves are capable of transferring block updates. See, since these leaves have a tag that updates whenever a log is nearby, we can use an observer to detect that signal. And in that way, we can send quick updates just by moving a log with a piston. Which seems crazy, but I know there's pros out there who can think of plenty of practical uses for it. If you've ever visited the Creative Mode's Redstone tab, you're aware that Minecraft has a few buttons to choose from. But while you're likely picturing something like this, what if I told you that these pressure plates could be pressed the same way? Here's an example. See, if we were to take a firework rocket and right-click it to place it on the pressure plate, then the entity will temporarily give off a pulse. And as such, we can trigger these plates from afar. And while the practicality is questionable, I'm sure your redstone experts can find a proper use for it. Armor stands seem pretty passive. I mean, it's a bunch of sticks on a slab. How bad could that be? But truth is, they can be a bit more feisty than they seem. And you'll see as much if you give them a piece of Thorn's enchanted armor. With this, the enchantment applies the same just as it would with us, which I'll admit is a pretty funny sight. And while it doesn't do a lot of damage, you'll still want to make sure that you take off your armor like this instead of just punching it off. Wither skeletons are generally scary to come across. So just imagine if one of these had the range of the overworld cousin. Well, apparently that's a lot more fact than fiction. If you actually give a wither skeleton a bow, not only does it beef up the attack area, but it also gives it fire arrows to shoot. And in retrospect, it's probably for the best that Mojang didn't give them a bow from the beginning. The last thing the Nether Fortress needs is another flame shooter. Campfires can be a useful decoration to have in your world, but by this point, everyone's already familiar with these things. So to step outside of the box, these armor stands are a sneaky solution. See, when placed in lava, these things burn pretty bright, letting us use a piston to add in our block of choice and successfully create a new illusion. And honestly, I'm surprised it works as well as it does. But it just goes to show that there's a couple more options out there than just using yet another flint and steel and a block of netherrack. The Warden's a tough mob to kill, and because of that, it can't drown or burn alive. So if you were to put it on top of a pad of magma blocks, it would never die. But if you put those same magma blocks underwater, it also can never escape. Because its movement speed is too slow to escape the current, it'll just spin around in a circle on those bubbles, which is hilarious to watch, but still don't get too close to it. Otherwise, it could still use its sonic boom attack and make it a lot less funny to watch. Now, despite what people try to get you to believe, this structure in the ancient cities is not a portal. But I can understand the confusion, since in the snapshots, this was actually labeled as a small portal structure in the game's code. Though now, it's been renamed to just small structure in the files. And that's not the only mistake that Mojang had to fix in the ancient cities. See, this new block is called Reinforced Deep Slate, and in certain snapshots, it was possible to push around this unbreakable block, meaning that we can move this around to make our very own wither cages in the overworld. Though that was changed in snapshot 22W13A. But even if we can't score Reinforced Deep Slate from the ancient cities, there is still a new enchanted book to grab, and with the Swift Sneak enchantment, we can finally make dive mining worthwhile again. See, while this is supposed to make you faster moving while crouched, it also lets us speed up while crawling, meaning you only need a 1x1 tunnel like this to have one of the most efficient mining setups in the game. And if you ask me, that's a lot more valuable than just silently sneaking past some skulk sensors. Especially since if we take after this user, we can just effectively sneak past a skulk sensor by using the sprint jump. Just make sure to sprint, jump, crouch, and then repeat, and you'll escape just fine. Even if you literally jump on top of the skulk sensors, which is just ridiculously broken. But we're not completely safe from the skulk sensors yet, and this trap proves as much. See, by arming 2 of these sensors alongside a powered rail with TNT minecarts on top, you cannot break any piece of the puzzle without the whole thing exploding. And the only options for dismantling this would be using water or some kind of piston contraption. But even then, with this user's updated design, the furnaces prevent water, and the glazed terracotta prevents slime blocks and pistons, making this a truly unbreakable trap. But maybe that's too evil for you. Well, no worries, this design is a lot more peaceful. See, skulk sensors already offer the chance for wireless redstone. This just enhances that. And now we get to create our own electrical poles to transmit signals. All it takes are some iron trap doors, and we can power a whole chain of these things. And then if you stack the system, we can have it go both ways. Oh, and also, you have to build them a little close together, because this is the range that you're working with on a skulk sensor. And this is what it looks like from above. above, which might seem limiting, but with that feature, we can make a particularly beautiful pattern just by throwing a snowball on a field of them. And for more fun, add in lamps like so to make this into a special light up floor that'll even react differently depending on where you throw that snowball. And even besides that, there's still a use for skulk sensors outside of Redstone. If you got the time, boot up a super flat world filled with skulk sensors and then fly up. And as you zoom out from the floor, you'll start to notice some pretty trippy patterns emerge from the ground. In the April Fool's one block at a time snapshot, it's possible to mount the Ender Dragon and ride it around as your own. Sure enough, if you get close enough where you can do this, you'll be able to hop on and steer it as you want, letting you use this for both a tunnel bore and some form of fast travel. And plus, it lets you move the Ender Dragon around in the overworld, which is more than it does by itself in regular versions. But the part that I don't get is that we only see 3 rows of hearts described here. And if you ask me, that seems pretty low for the biggest boss in Minecraft. With a game as open-ended as Minecraft, plenty of sneaky details are bound to pass some players by. And this one with wet sponges is definitely a common surprise. And I swear, every time I see a post about this, plenty of comments are shocked to find it out. So today, let's do something of a public service announcement and cover this for good. You see, if you put a wet sponge into a furnace and then smelt it using a lava bucket as fuel, you can get the water back in the bucket when it's done, which is a neat little Easter egg for sure. And now at least we all know it's there. Instead of using fireworks rockets, why not try a dolphin? Silly as it sounds, there is a way to use Dolphin's Grace for a boost while you're flying. Simply attach a lead to a dolphin, swim underwater, and then start flying for that speed boost. And if you get it down just right, you're even able to build up enough momentum underwater to launch yourself right out of the ocean. Just make sure not to drop your dolphin while you're up there. This sapling will never grow up, no matter how much you bone meal it. And the reason is that we have a little piece of string blocking it from growing. And hey, this can even work with vines, glow lichen, bamboo, and sugarcane as well. So if you're tired of watching your vines get overgrown on your wall, this could lead you to design your Ivy League in whichever way you'd like. Or do this on your friend's sugarcane farm and laugh when they don't get any profits. You might not see it, but there's actually a bubble elevator here. Because in Bedrock, we can make a fully operational bubble elevator without having any water or sand nearby. To do this, we make our regular bubble elevator using soul sand water sources, then block out the water sources using powdered snow, and finally use an end portal to break the soul sand, which sure enough leaves this kind of airstream that still works. Why? No clue, but I'm not gonna argue with results. Let's face it, no one wants to wait at their desk for hours, which is why going AFK is such a beautiful concept. But what seems like a dream for time management could just as easily be a nightmare. And I've seen far too many times where an AFK trip ends in an unattended death and a loss of items. So to fix that, let's give ourselves somewhere safe to wait. And for that, I think these safety boxes are a brilliant addition. By throwing down a composter with a trapdoor lid, we can squeeze ourselves into place and then shut the box for safety. That way, no monsters that spawn nearby can come over and ruin the operation. And then, when finished, we can hop out and reap the rewards just as planned. Minecraft treats certain hitboxes in weird ways, and that can be best seen when we talk about entity stacking. See, in certain cases, it's possible to rest one entity on top of another. And while I personally use this for letting me use a minecart as a hat, it can also let us crowd surf. Sure enough, if you ride a boat on top of a bed of entities, we can ride it just the same as we would on ice. Granted, it might not be the most popular travel method, but I'd say it's definitely worth a try, at least once for the screenshot. And with that, folks, YouTube thinks that you might like this video, so see if they're right and have a good one, alright?